Hey,
Ready.
welcome back, everybody. Of course, my name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is Coach's Corner. And I'm here with Mike, and I want to get this right. Mike Menahem?
That's correct. Menahem,
Cool.
yes.
And this is you run a very unique business. Now, I contacted you some time ago because I was trying to accomplish something and really didn't dig in deep enough to do what I wanted to do, and my career path went a different way. But you offer a very specific service. First, let's talk about what that is, and then I've got some really clear questions because I want to know more about you and the business.
Absolutely. Okay, great.
So first talk about, give us a real one or two headline clues as to what it is that you do.
Okay, great. I'll kind of go backwards a little bit. I came on board with a IT hardware reseller about call it 18 years ago. And my background was in retail banking and finance. So they needed a business development guy, and they said, "Hey, let's." Long story short, they said, "Hey, look, we need to sell to the government. We want to sell to the government," and I volunteered as their new rep, their new sales manager. And the next 10 years, we did probably 200 bids. The government buys off of this open market competition of lowest price technically acceptable. Some things are subjective. So we did 200 bids a year on average, and we won anywhere from 29 to 42 purchase orders. I share that story because that's really the source of all this knowledge and experience that I learned, and that's doing deals cradle to grave. And so I started GovBid Pro, website's govbidpro.com, about 8 years ago. And what we do is we help small businesses full service with their government bids, mostly federal, but also what's called SLED, state local education. We help them with their bids from the bid capture to the proposal writing, sourcing if they're a reseller, or maybe they're looking for a subcontractor, the submission, the type of submission. As you know, the government wants all types of paperwork, and then the back end in terms of contract management. So we help those businesses get positioned. And one of my mentors said, "What you do is you help people navigate the process. We help people navigate the process of doing business with the government," and that's perfect. To
So
answer the question.
so small businesses come to you for, like you said, cradle to grave, everything about doing business with the government. But I got to ask, what is the government buying?
Great question. So they buy everything
Really?
from our Defense Department, sure. The Navy, the Army, they buy not just bullets and missiles and tanks, but they buy virtual reality, artificial intelligence. That's a very hot topic right now. They buy clothes, and the FEMA buys these tents if God forbid there's a hurricane. Medical devices big, of course. Veterans Administration, um, office supplies for the Social Security Administration and other agencies that are not defense, like energy and education and that kind of thing. USAID is another big one. Construction is big. And so you sometimes have federal funds that go into local agencies like a airport, Tampa Airport, or now it's called Harry Reid Airport here in Las Vegas. It's a Harry Reid Airport, gets federal funds for construction. So those government agencies are working together. The feds, like a Department of Transportation with Orlando Airport or something like that, to say, hey, we need to expand this airport. Or unfortunately because of COVID, the healthcare, the health agencies, the health departments in the different municipalities. New York, Los Angeles, the big cities have obviously large populations. So those health departments got a lot from the CDC. There's funding opportunities. This administration, and I don't get into the politics. I tell people it's not politics, it's policy. So this administration is big on the green energy. Okay, well then let's talk about electric vehicles. Let's talk about the solar panels. What are some of those funding opportunities that are available there? So those are kind of like grants. So
So when a small business owner comes to you, do they need to be of a certain size or have been established for a certain amount of time in order to be considered credible by the government, or is it kind of just as long as they contact you, have the money to pay you, it's all good.
No, they need to do more than that. They have to register. They would go to sam.gov. We can walk them through it. It's not a hard process, believe it or not. It's a little bit bureaucratic, takes about 45 minutes. There's some paperwork, as you can imagine. But they go to sam.gov, and what they're looking for there is to create what's called a cage code, CAGE. And that, excuse my cold, I'm getting off a cold here.
You're good.
But anyway, that stands for Commercial and Government Entity Code. And so that code is given to that small business when the IRS does the research and the DLA does the research and says, okay, you're a US based company, you don't have any back child support or back taxes, you're a good person, you don't have any federal offenses, you're not supposed to be in jail, we're going to give you a cage code. So now they're registered, and now they can start doing bids. So there is a registration process.
So they look at both the small business entity as well as the owner of that entity, or is it considered all just one? Is it one just
Yes, they look at both. They look at that's a great segue. They look at not only the owner, and the owner being could be a woman-owned business, they could be a veteran, they could be American Indian, they could be in a hub zone, historically underutilized business zone. So that's something that they look at and say, okay, what type of small business owner are we looking at here? Because some of the bids that are out there in the open market on sam.gov are set aside for woman-owned and veteran-owned and 8A. 8A is your minority status, African American, Pacific Islander, and some of the other minorities. Hub zone, service disabled veteran owned is another one. So you could target that. If you're, for example, I have a client that she's woman owned and she's a veteran and she's American Indian, so she targets those bids
cool?
set
Um,
aside for that. Yep.
so going back to an earlier question, does a company have to be in business for some time, or can it literally be a startup? And this is kind of how their fiscal or their business model works, is they actually want to just work with government and government funding.
They can be a startup. They don't have to be now. It does. There is a caveat to that. It helps that they have a past performance, but it's kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg. So you've got to get started somehow, some way. So I say just hit the ground running and go get some past performance, and you've got to get started somewhere. So yes, you could be a startup that has no past performance. Someone's going to give you a chance, and that's how you get started. So
You
yeah.
mentioned earlier that you were a full service contract like person, like you actually take care of everything. Are there people in your marketplace that don't do that? Because I'm trying to figure out what differentiates you or what makes you special compared to other people in your industry.
Sure, that's a great question. So um, other people may just focus on one area, like a proposal writer or a grant writer or someone that handles the contract management piece. And let's talk about that real quick. So what's the contract management piece? Because the proposal writer, I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory. But the contract manager, the client would get a contract from the government and say it's a 5-year contract to deliver, say, cybersecurity services for an Air Force base in New Mexico or something like that. So that contract manager has to manage the day-to-day activities, that the deliverables that are going to this Air Force base.
Okay.
And if something's not being delivered, trust me, the Air Force is going to say, hey, you owe us this piece of equipment or whatever. So that's the contract manager, where GovBid Pro is different and better, quite frankly, than the other folks in the marketplace, is we do everything. And I outsource as well, but I can do everything. So can my freelancers that I hire, which of course they work at home because that's a popular thing to do now. But again, we do everything cradle to grave, from bid capture to proposal writing and sourcing to the submission to another thing that we do, by the way, is do GSA contracts for small businesses, and that's a couple months process. So proofreading is a huge thing. Last thing you want is the government to kick out a proposal because you didn't cross an I, or didn't cross a T, excuse me, didn't cross a T, didn't dot an I.
Right.
So again, we do everything, even the invoicing the government. And a big piece of what we do, a lot of people, as you know, doctor, is entrepreneurs are do-it-yourselfers. They're hands-on. They want to do it. They don't
Mhm.
want somebody to do it for them. They're like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. They're up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You know,
Someone throws over 3:30.
exactly right. And they're hitting the ground running. You know what I'm saying? And so the one of the things that we've implemented lately, the last year and a half or so, is training. So what we do is we say, okay, we'll be your coach and consultant in your corner, and we'll show you how to do it, and you'll do it because they're like a lot of these entrepreneurs, most of them, they're roll up the sleeves. Let's go to work. Let's do this. Okay, fine. So we learned um, to give the market what it wanted. These are small businesses, startups. These are your go-getters, and they want to learn how to do this. So we train them on how to do it too. So that's another, to answer your question. That's another thing that we do, is the training piece as well.
Well, now that I know that you handle all of the nuances and the steps, earlier you talked about there are specific piles of money for specific people applying for that money, but I'm really curious. I'm really interested now. What is the what's the government buying right now? Like what's the hot sale right now?
Hot sale. Okay. Well, the way to look at that is we got to take a step back and look at the 10,000-foot view. And the way the government works is it's an annual budget. And this administration put together a $1.7 trillion budget. Your top four areas, sectors, if you will, are going to be your IT, and inside IT is hardware, software, cybersecurity, and they're looking at artificial intelligence. And I'm sure you've seen that in the news. We'll talk about that later. And then the number two, the second rounder, if you will, is medical devices, anything medical, nurse staffing, the VA. The VA budget never goes down. The third thing is construction and facility services, your roof, your windows, your housing for in the Army bases. We have a client going after a contract right now. It's a 5-year contract to do inspections of housing on the Army bases to inspect all the appliances.
Cool.
Right, the oven, the microwave, the dishwasher, you get the air conditioner,
Mhm.
all that. But do that on 25,000 units. It'll take a while. Yeah. And so when you talk about facility services under construction, anything, painting, windows, roofing, flooring, doors, locks, you name it. And then the government also, by the way, rents out office and warehouse space.
Hmm.
So that's a big opportunity too. And they'll take whole floors, and they'll take 100,000 square foot warehouse in, Lincoln, Nebraska, or Albuquerque, New Mexico. So that's an opportunity as well. But that'll answer your question. So your IT, medical device, construction, and then the fourth one is like other, like services, like for example, like retirement services for the civilian contract managers that are retiring. They have to get all their ducks in a row when they're about to retire, their insurance, their retirement money, all that stuff. And so you've got to bring in financial advisors from industry, right, from the private sector, to say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is what we recommend you do with this X amount of dollars in your IRA or whatever they're doing. So that's a big piece too. There's a lot of outsourcing going on, training and development. Those are the areas where the government, and that's broad. And what I mean by that is across all the departments. Your DOD is going to be number one, of course.
Mhm.
DHS, we know that. We see the news with this Title 42 thing going on. And that's another thing that we do, by the way, here at GovBig Pro. We keep people abreast of what's going on. Say, hey, this is what's going on. The Speaker of the House is at the White House talking to the president about this debt ceiling. I don't think the government's going to shut down, but that's another
Conversation.
conversation. But
Yeah.
we keep a thumb on the pulse on what's going on in government. So that's another piece of.
So with the limited time we've got left, tell me a story. Tell me something special. Tell me something that you've done that you're really proud of either through the contract itself or a client that you've worked with.
Okay. Great. Well, it's actually not even GovBid Pro, it's before. So I had a government client call me up and say, hey, you sent the computers, and this is a Friday at like 3 o'clock, and the computers are wrong. Meaning they opened them up, they turned them on, and at 4 gigs of RAM, not 8 gigs of RAM, they ordered 8 gigs of RAM. So this is the danger of being a reseller and drop shipping product is your distributor might, people are human, they're going to make mistakes.
Mhm.
So what we did was we fixed it. I called the distributor. I said, you sent the wrong computers. Please send the right computers. So we did. And then we took back the not the bad computers, but the wrong computers, sent it back to him. So we fixed it, and at the end, it was a happy ending. You know what I mean? But and so I've got stories like that all the time. That I could share with you. There's so many case studies, but that's just the one thing that stuck in my mind to share that.
I appreciate that. So I found you on social media. Where are you and how can people find you? And what is the first thing that they need to tell you when they're wanting to contract with you?
Sure. So we are all over social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. We have a website. It's govbidpro.com. And we have a very simple process. Again, excuse my cold. We offer a complimentary consultation, 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever it may be. It could be a little bit longer, where we talk about, hey, tell me what's going on. And I think the great thing, the great value of that, first of all, the fact that it's complimentary, but even more important, it's one-on-one. So you could tell me whatever you want. You could tell me, and it's client privilege, meaning I'm not going to
It's
say
not going anywhere.
it's not a team. Exactly. It's not a group environment where you don't want to share something, you know. So again, there's some privacy and that's a good thing. But the first thing that I tell people, where are you in your business where you want to tell me why you want to go to government? The good thing about selling to government, they're not going out of business anytime soon,
Right.
unfortunately, but that's just my opinion. But no, and look, we're the taxpayer, so there's always going to be a budget. There's always going to be the Defense Department. Um, so they always pay. They've always paid. I've been doing this 19 years. They pay slow, but they always pay. Um, and if you do it right, it could be a really good market for a small business. So to answer your question about what's one thing that people just come with an open mind and just share with me what you want to share, and what are your thoughts, and like what you think government looks like. For example, a lot of people think, oh, it's just Raytheon and Boeing and Honeywell sell to government. That's not true.
Hmm.
26% of our national budget goes to small businesses, woman-owned, veteran-owned, 8A, HubZone, all those businesses. So there's opportunity for small businesses. It's not just the big, I call them the big houses, the Raytheon, the Honeywells, the Boeings that are making missiles and airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
We sell to them too. So, and the thing is, our purchase orders are a lot smaller. They're not $1 billion. They might be 100,000. They might be 50,000. But hey, I'd say yes to a $50,000 purchase order right now. I would, of course, I would. Right, with maybe making 10% or 20% margin. Why not? So,
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of your contact information in the description of this video. Before we leave this conversation, tell our audience what they should do right now today if they want to get a government contract through you. What do they have to get lined up?
The first thing is go to sam.gov. It's free, believe it or not. The government actually did this for free and they did it right. Go to sam.gov, go get your cage code and get registered. If you get stuck, give us a call or email us. It's real easy, mike@govbidpro.com. You'll put the contact info. You could call us. We're available 6 days a week. I work Saturdays, half a day. I'm available to my clients. I've got clients literally from Boston to San Diego, Tampa to Vancouver, Washington, which is obviously Washington State. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm in Las Vegas. It's warm here. The AC is supposed to kick on, but we'll see. It's warming up here in Vegas, but I'm up early for my clients that are on the East Coast.
Mike, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
My
Thank you for
pleasure.
joining me on Coach's Corner, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, Doctor.